Hello, wrestling fans. Welcome to the 6th episode of this NJPW Official English Podcast. My name is Walker Stewart, and we are set to get right into today's episode. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what we saw back at Destruction in Kobe 2025 and lead us right into this year's Road to King of Pro Wrestling and King of Pro Wrestling event coming up on October 13th, 2025. I'm going to be joined just momentarily by my good pal, Chris Charlton. You know him, you love him, and you're going to be hearing him in just a moment time. But just want to kick off just talking a little bit and thanking all of you fans, both internationally, domestically, and wherever you may be throughout the viewing world here in New Japan Pro Wrestling, for supporting NJPW. The ticket sales for the Tokyo Dome, astronomical pre-sale and astronomical general on sale first day. We have already beat out the January 5th, 2025 Tokyo Dome attendance that was set at 16,000. We're over 20,000 sold within the first week of general on sale. It's been a phenomenal time here to be a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So we thank you so much. And for those of you who have not gone ahead and purchased tickets for January 4th, 2026, the debut of judoka gold Olympic medalist Aaron Wolf on the card. Hiroshi Tanahashi's final ever career matchup will be singing the praises in the retirement of one ace of the universe. It's going to be an incredible time, and you can get your tickets for that. NJPW1972.com right off the bat. Banner right at the top of the screen. Click on it. It's for tickets. You're going to find it right there. Not to mention, of course, we have very, very limited tickets on sale for January 2nd, 2026. It is going to be the New Year's Eve party coming up in Ebrietas. That is Toru Yano's bar. It's going to be around 11:30 a.m. in the morning. So not anything too crazy going on other than, of course, Chanko to your heart's content. There is going to be a 2-hour open bar live English podcast recording. Come meet myself, Walker Stewart. Come meet my good pal, Chris Charlton. And you never know which guests are going to be showing up for the New Year's party to kick off New Japan Pro Wrestling in the year of 2026. We only have a few tickets left on sale for that. I believe about 2 or 3 at this point in time. They may be all gone by the time that you're listening to this. So NJPW1972.com to get your tickets for that one. And we thank you so much for supporting and being a fan of NJPW and the official NJPW English podcast. Before we get into this episode, I just want to thank everyone for sticking around. We do have a couple of audio issues and technical issues throughout this one, but we wanted to try our best to get something up in the month of October. It is a very, very busy schedule between going from Road to King of Pro Wrestling into Ryogoku. I get about a week off before we get back into Super Junior Tag League, and you can only imagine how the roster and how the staff and how people in the office have to be feeling as well. So we thank you for sticking with us. We hope you still enjoy nonetheless, and we will be back to regular circumstances come episode 7 in the month of November. So I'm going to toss it over to Walker Stewart from 5 hours ago, and we will see you on this edition of the NJPW English Podcast. September 28th has come and gone, Chris.
Already finished.
Yep, we've been there. There was a whole 24 hours in September 28th. We experienced all of them. And for 3.5 of those hours, 4 of those hours, we experienced the greatest professional wrestling in the world. All right. Destruction in Kobe 2025 has come and gone for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And, you know, you and I were talking a little bit before we actually went on air where, we kind of had the conversation about how it didn't feel like a lot of things were being settled at this event, but rather set for after this event based off the structure of the card, right?
Yeah. I think we can just go quick thoughts on it, but I think like that was one of those, I think we spoke about it afterwards, where it's like, oh, this is one of those shows that felt good on 2 fronts, because like I think we had great matches like really up and down the card, but we also had, okay, I can start to see how this sets up a bunch of things for King of Pro Wrestling, more immediately, which we'll talk about, but you can start to see a picture in your mind palace about Tokyo.
Right. Yeah, I just want to hit on 3 quick points from that September 28th card to talk about and get your reaction to. New IWGP Tag Team Champions, Yuto Ice and Oscar, their very first challenge, walking away with the victory over Taichi and Ishii. I'd love your thoughts on that.
I mean, it was a a great match. It was very scrappy, very violent, and I think like a different style to what we've seen a lot of our recent young lions specifically come back from, right? So, I mean, I think, if you were to look at Shota and Yuya specifically, because they're the next challenges, I mean, you can see guys that are very, more sort of classical Tanahashi mold. Hey, were a little bit different, but within a sort of power fighter technical wrestling mold. So more in that, what people here call classical professional wrestling. And then you have, Ice, who's a very, very different, like that bachi kind of style of wrestler that we haven't really seen for a long time. But guys in the mold of like Shibata, guys in the mold of Ishii, but like to a sense as well, like guys in the mold of Hiroki Goto and Shingo Takagi, I mean, like and you see a guy like Ice and you think, oh, he's going to match up very well with those guys and be something a little bit different. And we haven't seen a sort of giant like Oscar. I mean, I guess it's different. I mean, it's difficult. I think, I mean, the easy comp is Hikuleo. But I think Hikuleo, when he was in Bullet Club, wasn't quite in he hadn't grown into his body yet.
Right, yeah.
And then I think when he was, when he left Bullet Club with that sort of year-ish in Hontai, I think it's difficult for a guy that giant size to be, to wrestle as a protagonist. And I think like it naturally behooves you to be, where are you from, anywhere, I don't know, please kind of like thing that Oscar seems to carry. So I'm looking forward to seeing that more. And then you had the through line after that. Immediately Shota and Yuya show up. So here we have like this dimensionality, I guess, to like tag team wrestling, heavyweight tag teams in New Japan now that is really interesting for the rest of the year. It's a difficult ask for Ice and Oscar to. I think it's a step beyond to beat Ishii and Taichi for the title and then to try and hang on to it against Uruma and Umino. Like that's a difficult match to call, I think, to predict. But I mean, I think like the big thing is, we'll talk about Korakuen on October 6th, which hopefully people will be listening to this in time for. But that Yuya and Yuto match, that singles match, and like 4 years of a grudge of Ice being denied like sort of 9 months and a critical early 9 months of his career because of that injury on Valentine's Day 2021, being carried forward. I think like that is like there's something personal to them, and I think like that's the key thing right here, like in our game, right? I mean, championships, but then like personal vendettas. And I think like here you have like both of those married together in one match, which is very
appealing. I think that this is the most out of the returns from Excursion that I've been around for. I've really only been around for two, and it's going to be the Knockout Brothers and Ryohei Oiwa back in September of last year. But I was just about to come into the system right before or right after Yuya Uemura returned from Excursion September 2023. And comparing the three returns between Yuya, Oiwa, and the Knockout Brothers, it feels like KOB have really had the most definitive direction. And maybe that comes down to just being together as a tag team upon return. But there's really only one major thing you're going to go after here, and it's going to be those IWGP Tag Team Championships. And I think that they have made the most out of any return from Excursion I've been in the system to see. Of course, that's been a very limited time by comparison to maybe you yourself, but it's it really struck a chord for me in that way, knowing the fact that Oscar and Yuto came in saying we want to be the ones to put the injection of life back into the tag team division, and then they made good on that. The question now being, we turn our attention toward October 13th coming up, the IWGP Tag Team titles on the line. You talked about Shota Umino and Yuya Uemura. It has been 1 year since the Tag Team Championships have been successfully defended. That was back in Ryogoku last year, TMDK against Caveman Ugg and Bad Luck Fale. So, now we're in this situation where Oscar and Yuto have already gone into step one of their plan. But can they really call themselves the definitive in tag team wrestling today if they don't defend those tag titles successfully?
Yeah, I think that puts a lot of pressure upon them coming into Ryogoku. So I mean, like with all with all the respect in the world to Caveman Ugg and Bad Luck Fale, like here you had in that instance Fale, who around for obviously a very, very long time, but with now Don Fale and sort of having that challenge to Bolton Oleg and came short with that. I mean, Fale's kind of focus predominantly is down in New Zealand, right? And then you had Caveman Ugg, who was really like to Japanese audiences an unknown quantity. So like they had an uphill climb even before it was like, hey, try and out wrestle TMDK, this very, very established tag team. So here you have something very different where with Umino and Uemura, like established quote unquote as a tag team very, very young in that field. So they don't have the team experience that Oscar and Ice do. But they are established quantities in New Japan and very much sort of focused upon quantities in New Japan. So yeah, but as individuals as well, right?
Right.
So I mean, I think that's another one of those things where it's really interesting, really intriguing. I mean, I think to your point earlier on about returning from excursion, the comp we were talking about in the office was Hiromu, maybe. I mean, I think like I think Hiromu and Jay White, like there you had that's your best comparison, I think, in terms of not in terms of profile coming in per se or necessarily, but people that come in and jump off the page, and people that come in where you go, oh, okay, like this is who these guys are. They know who they are. Whereas, like, I think there's been a feeling out process for some of the other people. For Yuya, I think it's gone through it. Umino's definitely gone through it. And I think Oiwa's still going through it. Right. Where it's like, where are you going to fit in? Where's your declarative sort of statement? I think you see that with Uruma and Oiwa in the G1. That's where you saw, like, oh, this is what they want to do. This is what they want to be. But that took them best part of a year for Oiwa, nearly 2 years for Yuya Uemura. So like, yeah, I think for Icy for more so to come out and maybe to some people be a figure of ridicule, but to own it and to go like, this is who I am and this is what my identity is, like that is huge for them.
Well, getting into the second point to touch on that leads to King of Pro Wrestling on October 13th, Shingo Takagi falling to Gabe Kidd for the IWGP Global Heavyweight title is our semi-main event back on September 28th in Kobe. The main talking point, of course, not coming in regard to Shingo Takagi, but his unaffiliated member in Yota Tsuji coming down to ringside, fresh off a victory over David Finlay earlier on in the evening. We are set for Gabe Kidd, Yota Tsuji number 3, and that is a singles match that at least post-excursion for both of those two men. Of course, a very long-winded history and a lot of matches between the two during their days in the Noge Dojo, but post-excursion, that has not exactly gone the favor for Yota whatsoever, and the global title's now on the line October 13th. Give me your thoughts.
Well, so, like, yeah, if you looked at this year alone, then it's the case of, does it end at 2-0-1, or is it all tied up at 1-1-1, right? Yeah, I mean, I think in and of itself, here you have, like, the third time they've done this match this year. I think both of those guys, maybe they're different stances or different mindsets, different approaches, and how the fans view them as well has changed quite significantly from February up until now in all sorts of different ways. And I think like I think in a sense, both of them feel a need to put this match into a broader context. And I think like both of them have been, and to put the global title into a broader context as well, right? And I think like that's partly why both of them have been talking a lot about the Tokyo. You know, and I think this is like that speculation. I mean, Gabe has put it openly, and very openly talked about, hey, I want to win the global championship, and then I'm going to challenge for the world heavyweight championship at Wrestle Kingdom 20. I don't think Yoda Tsuji didn't explicitly put that out, but like, you know, when he came out to ringside, I think he said on the mic, you know, me and you both want to do the same thing, and we both need that global championship to be able to do it. So like, it feels like that semi-main event and the main event in Ryogoku are going to be you know, sort of very closely tied together. And yeah, I mean, you don't know, because I mean, I think both of those guys are putting things into the universe, but they're not there in the universe now, so we have to talk about it.
Right.
And like, is it a case where, you know, Gabe or Tsuji challenges Zack or Takeshita for Tokyo Dome? I mean, I think when you look at what's the biggest match that we can put on the Tokyo Dome for the fastest selling Wrestle Kingdom of all time, the most eyes, it's going to be the most viewed Wrestle Kingdom of all time. Yeah, I mean, certainly you would think, take your pick from the roster right now. I would say Gabe Kidd or Yoda Tsuji would be the biggest stars to challenge. Right. That's why they're the global champion, right? Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I think like from the sort of promoter's mindset, that makes sense. But yeah, well, I mean, what do you think? I was around for the last time there was, you know, 2 championships.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I'm not certain about how I feel regarding the idea of looking to parlay what you would call a secondary championship into a world heavyweight championship opportunity. And I know it's something that we've seen before in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but it is a very, I don't know, I think it's always a controversial decision, right? I think that, you know, dating back to my days watching stuff in the United States primarily, there was a conversation often touted with TNA's X Division championships. Some people really liked the idea of option C, right? And using that to parlay for a TNA heavyweight title opportunity and so forth. It's an interesting one, but like at the end of the day, whether you see it as parlaying one championship opportunity to get to a real goal, no matter what, as a professional wrestler, the more championships that you have, the higher your money is, right? Sure. And the more you're going to be collecting at the pay window. And I think that right there, I mean, if Gabe Kidd has not already said it himself, it's very evident that that is a primary goal for Kidd, you know, constantly taking on fights in All Elite Wrestling, taking on every fight he can get here in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It has to be a hell of a motivator. And it's going to be a really interesting, but the question still is as well, you know, or I guess the idea goes that Gabe Kidd or Yota Tsuji, one of those two men will walk away with the Global Heavyweight Championship. But just because they're saying, hey, whoever wins this really wants that World Heavyweight title shot, doesn't mean that's going to be who challenges at the Tokyo Dome.
No, of course not.
And it's a really interesting thing to talk about, especially regarding, you know, I'll talk about Kidd a little bit more and the justification of that side, because if there's anyone who probably might want it intrinsically a little bit more, you might have to argue Kidd, knowing that if Konosuke Takeshita wins the World Heavyweight Championship in Ryogoku, Gabe Kidd is the one who was put on the shelf in the G1 by Konosuke Takeshita. Who was the one that he was denied his next match with the day it was announced he had the injury was Zack Sabre Jr., right? So Gabe Kidd wants both of those matches still, wants all those matches that he was not able to have due to injury in the G1. I'm very interested to see where the state of the Global Heavyweight Championship scene goes from there.
I would say, yeah, I mean, I think Yota Tsuji's motivations are somewhat different, you know, because I mean, I think like he's spoken of in the past, like, you're wanting to reestablish the IWGP, that being the IWGP Heavyweight Championship as opposed to the World Heavyweight Championship that we have now. And I think like he as well is maybe on a mission to think, I can do what Tetsuya Naito can do, right? Which is to have both championships at the same time and defend them both separately, you know, and have that sort of, you know, maintaining the quote unquote top title in the IWGP while at the same time sort of fortifying the global championship as like as an even basis, and that they're both very they're both on similar layers of prestige. And I think like there's a lot you look at Tsuji, you see a lot of Tetsuya Naito and Yota Tsuji. You see a lot of Shinsuke Nakamura and Yota Tsuji as well. And like, Nakamura sort of colored the Intercontinental title in the way that I think Tsuji intends to with the Global Championship, and he sees like the World Heavyweight title as a means to be able to do that. And of course, you're one of the greatest what ifs probably in world history of our generation, yet alone professional wrestling. Would be like, well, what if the pandemic didn't happen? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think Tsuji sort of just has that sort of mission in the back of his mind. It might be academic. Who knows? It might all be a moot point.
We'll save talking about the Kobe World Heavyweight title main event up until we get to talking about our King of Pro Wrestling main event. One will lead to the other. But on the road to King of Pro Wrestling, I mean, it's really interesting to see how the junior heavyweight division has kind of become its own separate thing on these road to events. We saw it on the road to Battle Line Hokkaido, Road to Destruction, the final night 10. In Sapporo, the junior heavyweight tag and junior heavyweight singles championships both defended. And you're getting that as well on the Road to King of Pro Wrestling tour. This series, night 1 is going to be kicking off on October 4th. It'll be coming up in the next day. This may or may not be out by that time comes. But the real meat and potatoes of this series coming up night 2, October 6th. The IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship on the line. Desperado has an opportunity at Doki's titles coming up on October 11th. Doki has an opportunity at Desperado's championship. And, well, by all accounts, Doki also believes he is the rightful IWGP Junior Heavyweight title holder.
Yeah, that seems fair enough, doesn't it? He lost by... Yeah, I think, like... it's interesting. We get from talking about the global title and quite secondary titles. And I brought up Shinsuke Nakamura, but I mean, I think, like, when Shinsuke was Intercontinental Champion, I think the IC and the Heavyweight title has similar relationships to what the Junior Heavyweight and the World Heavyweight title have had this year, where the Junior Heavyweight Championship may be on slightly smaller markets, but has main evented all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Now Desperado's made that a main event championship. Now, V8 deep, so it's the second most dominant run of all time. Heat at V11, back, 20 years ago or so. So I think, like, Despa's never one to really bear that sort of stuff in mind, but it has to be there to an extent. And then, you had this thing of, Doki sort of owing a lot to Desperado. Obviously, his very first spot in New Japan because of, he was in the sphere, certainly, and I think he owes a lot of his career, Doki does, to Taichi, but at the end of the day, if it wasn't for Desperado breaking his jaw, he wouldn't have been in Best of the Super Juniors in 2019. You sort of go on and on. So, like, he owed his spot to Suzuki-gun, to Despe, owed that championship, basically owed being put in a championship winning position to Despe. And then, the flip side of that, well, he owes his injury to Despe. He owes everything being taken away from him to Despe. And he owes the connection to House of Torture via Kanemaru to Despe. So it's sort of like this poison pill that I think we'll see in Korakuen Hall and in Saitama, right? So yes. October the 11th.
Yep.
And this is where you have, like, Desperado teaming with Kukai, who's going to be a new face against Doki.
Can you talk to us a little bit about Kukai? And I have a general idea. Started under a different name over in Michinoku Pro. Yeah. Ended up stepping away from Michinoku Pro Wrestling about 3, 4, 5 years ago, something in that span. And really working, as we've talked about with Desperado and Doki as well, those dirt floors of the Mexican independent wrestling scene, the grittiest of the grittiest. And Kukai has been making his name, but obviously still keeping connections with men like El Desperado. And I think it really was a shock when, just out of nowhere in post-match comments, Desperado mentioned, hey, there's a guy named Kukai, and he's going to be with me, and we're coming after your tag team championships.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise, yeah. I mean, Kukai, you're right, it's 2022. He went on this indefinite excursion over to Mexico, wrestled a little bit in AAA, but then predominantly like places like IWRG and things like that. I think sent you a couple of YouTube videos.
Yes.
Like you get a feel of like Mexican independence for sure. Maybe Cubs fan can probably fill you in better than we can, but you've got and he was trained predominantly from what I hear by Musashi. So like remember Musashi teaming with Yo on Super Junior Tag League a couple of years ago. So there's a little bit of the funny, and I think like Desperado was halfway doing this as a precautionary measure. You know, you saw in his backstage comments like, if I don't say something, they're gonna fucking put me with Wato again, or like, they're gonna put me with Yo, and it was like a disaster last time. And I think like those being in a predicament where he was in 6-9 tags opposite Yo, I think like Desperado was slightly concerned that he would be with Yo. So like maybe there was that link with Yo to Musashi to Kukai as well. So like but I think it's really interesting to see that through line, and then you have that 3 of the 4 guys in that match having that experience in Mexican independence, and Kukai probably knowing more of what Doki might do and what Doki's mindset might be. The chip on Doki's shoulder, which I think is like key to who Doki is. That's why I think Doki never wanted to be part of Hontai, right? It's that he's always had that chip on his shoulder. He's always said like the guys that come through the New Japan system and then they go over and they have a nice excursion in CMLL, they're treated like kings or whatever, and I never had that. And now recently Doki has been they've been very House of Torture pills and going around saying that they call me a god in Mexico. I think Kukai would understand some of that mentality. But that means like Sho is the odd guy up in those 4. So I think Sho's sort of interactions with the other 3 in that matchup is intriguing.
Well, we are going to be seeing Kukai on the road to King of Pro Wrestling throughout up until that IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team title match. And just to hit a little bit further on El Desperado and Doki, it was the stipulation, yes, you can challenge for my championship, but I will challenge for yours. That is why we have both the tag team and the singles championship main eventing on back-to-back nights, really, or as close as you can get to it for Road to King of Pro Wrestling. Talking a little bit more about Doki, whenever you and I first saw Doki return, I believe it was back in Osaka, join House of Torture, win the IWGP Junior Tag Team Championship, you and I had a conversation after the fact of like, gosh, not only were you and I fairly heartbroken, yet maybe not entirely shocked. You can't have a guy named Japones del Mal in Hontai, right? But, we asked the question of like, okay, some people join House of Torture and change everything they do in the ring stylistically. And we asked maybe, would that be the case for Doki? I'd like to kind of gauge your perception on that now that we've seen a couple of tag team defenses go the way of House.
Yeah, I think like you saw in Sapporo, like that. I think there's still a lot of the old Doki in there. I think like that. I think like there's something to. I think maybe we even talked about it in during the Naruto and Zack match. There's something to like people want to like House of Torture, and I think like we've gotten more of that recently, especially ever since the G1, right, and the G1 final. Like people want to like House of Torture. Does that sort of on some level? I think if you're evil, you don't think about that. I think if you're Kanemaru, you don't think about that. I think if you're Doki that was being cheered by, and pretty much beloved for like half of last year, does that awareness, Doki's a smart guy. Like, does that sort of spring to mind? Does that sit in the back corner of your mind? Perhaps it does. But maybe it does the same for Ren Naruto too.
It's going to be interesting to see night 2, October 6th, the junior title on the line, El Desperado and Doki. Night 4 coming up, Saitama, October 11th, the junior tag team championship. And of course, that leads us 2 days down the line. The big one, King of Pro Wrestling, Ryogoku Sumo Hall. And it is going to be a stacked night of action, getting right into it, of course. We have been continuing to see the battle between the unaffiliated and the Bullet Club War Dogs. Now we throw Teton into the unaffiliated mix, back for the King of Pro Wrestling Tour. Always a pleasure to see Teton, especially outside of when there's a requirement for junior heavyweight competitors, and it's or a need in the best of the super junior or super junior tag league. So Teton getting the showcase here is going to be a great thing. 6-man tag team action: Shingo Hiromu Teton versus Finley Ishimori and Clark Connors will, of course, lead on into Drilla Maloney versus Sonata in singles competition. I think it's the only, I believe, non-title singles matchup that we're going to be dealing with on the evening. Talking a little bit about that, Chris, of course, Maloney has eaten acoustic guitar after acoustic guitar. You'd think Maloney would be singing a different tune by now, but Sonata's the only one looking to do so, I think.
Yeah, being split open by that guitar seems to be a pretty frequent occurrence at this point. I think one of the interesting things that I think we see on the road to as well is like Driller and Clark teaming together for the first time since Tokyo,
right?
Like in terms of straight tag, and so there is that unity, and so I think like that, maybe that unity is going to help Driller, because I would assume that House of Torture unity is going to be more focused on the Evil and the Ryogoku Championship, which we'll get to, than they are necessarily Sonata. That said, I think, where would we be 3 Ryogokus in a row now where Sonata's had a singles match low down in the card and that it's prompted something heinous from him later on? Or maybe it wasn't Ryogoku, but Sonata and Shota, it was Power Struggle last year, wasn't it?
Yep.
He had that low down matchup, and then I've got to make a change, and he jumps over to War Dogs. In April, Ryogoku this year wrestled Yuya Uemura, went down to him pretty damn quick, and then turns on War Dogs, joins House of Torture. So, what factions are left for Sonata?
Yeah, we're running out of options.
Should Drilla Maloney beat him? It certainly, that's something I think you do have to keep in the back of your mind. But I think as well, like, you have like War Dogs being sort of forced into a corner right now. Where David Finlay goes is interesting, having lost that match to Yoda Tsuji, and I think there's a potential there of if you're Finlay, having lost to Yoda Tsuji and Kobe, and then win, lose or draw in that 6-man. But if you see, say, Driller beat Sonata and set himself up, you could easily see the winner of that match, maybe in line for another openweight title, maybe in line to be the next global challenger, maybe, and then you see potentially Gabe Kidd, if he beats Yoda Tsuji, coming out, marching out and challenging Zakko Takeshita for the World Heavyweight Championship at the Tokyo Dome. And then here you are, David Finlay, the rebel savior, the Savage King, and you're number 3 in your own faction.
Right.
Like, I think that is, Finlay being forced into that corner is always interesting, because where does he go from here?
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's weird to see as well the New Japan Cup winner this year be in such a state of limbo in the later half of 2025. Especially, I think maybe specifically just because it's a man like David Finlay, who has always had a direction, even if it was not of his own division, but, Gedo being inside his ear and saying, hey, this is the direction that maybe we need to be taking things. We've always questioned who was pulling the strings within certain parts of Bullet Club. And, really nothing has gone the way for David Finlay in the interim, in the past of it. So I'm very interested to see what happens between not only the unaffiliated and the War Dogs, but also Drilla Maloney and Sonata. And hey, this is a hell of a surprise. Hiroki Goto making his in-ring return, not on the road to King of Pro Wrestling, but October 13th itself. It is a Chaos reunion. Bishamon, Goto, Yoshihashi, and Yo against TMDK, Oiwa Jackson, and Fujita. And that's definitely going to be a bit of a trend setter, a pace setter. We talk about setting the tone, especially all the way to the main event. And we'll get into Zack Sabre Jr. and Konosuke Takeshita later on. But it's just good to see Hiroki Goto back inside the ring. And Hollywood famous now, Hiroki Goto.
Yeah. Harley Jackson said, if you're going to bring E Honda, I'll be your Zangief. So, I think like there's something to that. And then I think like Chaos reunion, but Bishamon reunion, with Goto and Yoshihashi, and I think like a lot of people are wondering, okay, so where does this Goto Revolution go from here? Is he someone a lot of people have sort of thrown his name out there as someone that could challenge the World Heavyweight title, either at Tokyo Dome or before it? Because I think with the way that he lost it, he was beaten by Zack, but effectively due to injury. You would say that he has a distinct claim. But from, to loop back around to tag team wrestling, like you have Bishamon on one side, you have the potential light of a Noira and Hartley team on the other side, and I think as we're getting towards tag team season, that's exciting.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see for tag team season, but we're back in the singles side for this one. NJPW World Television Championship on the line. A lot to unpack. The final road connection match for Hiroshi Tanahashi. Final time in Ryogoku Sumo Hall. El Phantasmo's 20th anniversary debut matchup in Ryogoku Sumo Hall. And it is Phantasmo Tanahashi for the NJPW World TV title. 1 fall, 15 minutes on the clock. And, I've been talking to Phantasmo a little bit, different days that he's joined in the English broadcast booth you're well aware of. And G1 Climax season came around. And, by the time Phantasmo had last joined me in the English booth, he said, well, my G1's basically done. I've lost out on points. He was the first eliminated due to points, or not having enough of them, rather. And he said, really, the only thing I want to do is wrestle Tanahashi in a singles match. And he alluded to it a couple of times in post-match comments in the G1 series. And the matchmakers have fallen to the wayside here tonight. Phantasmo and Tanahashi, World TV title on the line. It's
rare that you have a match that has 3 subtitles in it. So here you have NJPW World Television Championship and El Phantasmo's 20th anniversary debut and Hiroshi Tanahashi's final road. I think we were just talking about tag team season. Obviously, last year, it's no secret that this would have been one of the World Tag League entries. But here you have the two of them go up against one another, and yet another title shot for Hiroshi Tanahashi. Everybody, it's not just every wrestler in the world, and that includes the champions. Want to wrestle Tanahashi before he retires, and so Tana's worked his way into a lot of championship opportunities here, and so here you go. Can he beat El Phantasmo on a quite a bit of a tear,
right? Yeah, certainly so. And I think what's really going to be interesting about this one, first off, Tanahashi giving his final Ryogoku Sumo Hall match to a member of Hontai. And if you remember last year, round apart this time, there was a big question as to whether or not El Phantasmo would be a member of Hontai. House of Torture really seemed to be soliciting the services, if they could, of the World Television Champion, of El Phantasmo. And now Tanahashi, it almost gets to come full circle. Tanahashi was the one that reminded El Phantasmo in Ryogoku itself, hey, here is the light, and here's where we need you in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And now that getting rewarded with the one match Phantasmo has told me personally he's always wanted to have in his career. He's never gotten to have until October 13th, and that's the singles with Tanahashi. I think the time limit is something that we really need to look into as well for this one. And I don't think Tanahashi is really in the season of pushing 60-minute draws anymore, right? But 15 minutes, we saw Tanahashi go a couple of distances over 15 back in G1 season. So I'm really interested to see the direction that this one goes. Phantasmo just as much needing this victory as Tanahashi does, because no one wants to go into their final road. No one wants to go into their final match January 4th, 2026 on any sort of losing streak. And a losing streak can begin at any time. It could start here for Tanahashi. We're going to have to see coming up on that night. But on the 5th match on your card, the Never Openweight Championship on the line, Bolton Oleg and Evil, only one singles match previous, but it wasn't Evil who as much got the win over Oleg back in the G1 as much as it was Don Fale. Now, Fale wasn't able to say the same back in Kobe, and that is what has led Evil to stepping up to the plate against Oleg.
Yeah, Bolton can't seem to get away from House of Torture. I think over the last sort of 2 years, both of his first championship runs, Never Openweight 6-man titles, was very, very much centered around House of Torture. And now here we have, finally he's made this break for himself. And first singles championship, Never Openweight championship, beat Konosuke Takeshita to win it. And had a very good G1. And still House of Torture, want to drag him down. I think in a way because they want the big man from Kazakhstan in their house and not in the Hontai house. And so, here we have, does Boltin finally put, because I think once you defeat evil, I think that and you do it one-on-one, that puts House of Torture in your rearview mirror, and like it means you can finally sort of focus on what's next.
It's the final boss of House of Torture.
The
yes,
final boss of House of Torture is the inventively named evil. Or is this a case where, because I have a hard time thinking evil's not going to go shenanigan free with this one. And evil beating Boltin, I don't think it would end there. I would have to think that Boltin would be able to step up. I think one thing that we've seen recently, and we saw with Naruto and Zack Sabre Jr., specifically in Kobe, is we've seen our young lions around ringside take charge a lot more. And I think like maybe this is part of the key with Tanahashi reinvigorating Honsai. Maybe this is a thing of Shota Umino and Yu Uemura, guys like that, working with these kids and saying that, like, they're told not to interfere, those guys around ringside, unless it's absolutely necessary. But I think they've been a little bit more encouraged, our young lions and our ringside attendants, to say, if it comes down to it, make sure we protect the sanctity of the match. So I think maybe this is a case where Boltin wouldn't want anyone to interfere on his behalf. But I think if you take a look at the muscle around ringside, and hopefully there will be some, then, because I think we don't have any young lions on this card, right? So hopefully the whole force, everybody, Kato, Murashima, maybe even, hey, Daiki Nagai, still a young lion, even if it's unaffiliated. Aaron Wolf, I don't know. Like, have everybody that's there around ringside and take care of things, should it be needed, and just like give everybody the boot.
Well, we've talked a little bit already about the IWGP Tag Team Championship that'll be on the line. The Knockout Brothers, Oscar and Yuto Ice, looking for the first defense in a year of the Tag Team Gold against Yuya Uemura and Shota Umino. And we didn't exactly highlight it as much as well, but October 6th, Korakuen Hall as well. We're going to be seeing 2 separate singles matches between these two. And that's where I think you're really going to start to see the personal flare-ups of Yuto Ice and Yuya Uemura, really more so than Shota Umino and Oscar. But it is going to be the first singles matches for Yuto and Oscar, respectively. For Yuto, maybe in quite some time, in fact, even especially on his European and New Zealand excursion. I can't think of any singles bouts really off the top of my head.
Yeah, like there have been some. There have been like New Zealand dojo matches.
Right.
So I think like there was a spell where Oscar was working for a few months because Yuto was hurt.
Right.
And then there were more singles matches. But it is a very different environment in Stewart and Korakuen Hall. So I think that was set up very, very well for this tag team match, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Umino and Uemura, very new team, first time challenging for the tag team gold. We're going to see how that goes. We've touched on the semi-main event already. No need to really get back into that again. But Gabe Kidd, Yota Tsuji, the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship. Third time's a charm, maybe, for Yota Tsuji in this year between, a double knockout back in February. Then, of course, Kidd's victory of the title all the way back when. And, of course, we go to our main event. And to talk about our main event, we have to talk about our main event September 28th. It was Zack Sabre Jr., Ren Narita, World Heavyweight title on the line. 29-plus minutes of action. And you really saw some purity out of Ren Narita until you didn't. Until you didn't. But a second defense up for Zack Sabre Jr. has set the Ryogoku Sumo Hall standard. And it really interesting to note, okay, I know there's going to be discourse around it. And I know it's going to be something that we have to talk about because it's something that's going to influence maybe a fan voice and a very vocal Ryogoku Sumo Hall that we're set to have. But Konosuke Takeshita, not on this series whatsoever, on the road to undercard or main events or anything like that. Those are really predominantly set for the unaffiliated and War Dogs feud that we've been seeing. But same going for a lot of TMDK and Zack Sabre Jr. specifically, not involved on any of our road to events as well. And, I really have to ask you the question, I guess, where you stand on that. We've seen Sabre Jr. constantly on every single tour, every single chance he could get as World Heavyweight Champion, even World Tag League Tournament last year, right? But, taking the route that a lot of people would kind of judge Konosuke Takeshita for, has Sabre Jr. earned the right to have those 4 days off, I guess, and Takeshita hasn't? Where does it sit?
Yeah, I think it's a short tour. B, say Zach is wrestling in China. I think that Guangzhou show, and a lot of people have asked, like, will we have footage on that or what? Like, we'll see, when we'll know. Or we'll know, you'll know when we will know.
Yes.
That's how we say it. I think, and to that in mind, there was a question of, well, if he's on the road, if Zach did the towns, and it's only a very, very limited number, of very short term, to wrestle on the road to King of Pro Wrestling, it would be one thing if those were previews with the challenges to the World Heavyweight Championship, but that such not being the case, well, I think Zach would be very, very justified to kind of say, well, I'm going to conserve my body, I'm going to keep in training and stay in shape and not potentially risk injury in prelim tags if my opponent is not going to be there. I could understand that mindset, but that's not the mindset that Zach has, so that's why he's going to China. That's why he's being, I think the very sort of embodiment of a world heavyweight champion, emphasis on worlds. I think Takeshita has the same, they're not too far separate in terms of what their mindset is of what a world heavyweight champion should be. But I think there's a lot. There's a documentary we're putting up for Konosuke Takeshita. It went up on Japanese on YouTube this week. We're working on getting it subbed, and it should be probably certainly before King of Pro Wrestling. I'll have that in English for you. But there's a part in there where Takeshita's saying, sort of admitting and accepting the fact that he'll be booed in Ryogoku, and I think like that will likely be the case. But Takeshita kind of saying, look, I can change my touring schedule. I can change the way I wrestle. I can change my style, my approach, my work in the ring and outside of it. And I am able to make the people that are booing me cheer me. But to what end? And does that, for the people that are supporting me because I'm doing what nobody else has done, for the people that are supporting me for being triple contracted, for being, AEW and DDT in New Japan all in 1 week plus more, going down to Mexico and all of this stuff. There are people that support me for doing the things that I do and wrestling the way that I do. So if I had upped and changed everything, how would those people feel? And I think as well, Take being, I think there are some people, there are a limited number of people, but there are people that think beyond their role in this business and more about like the professional wrestling as a whole, right? Capital P, capital W. And I think Zach is one of those people. And I think, you can pick out a few in the world right now. Maybe Yoda Tsuji, maybe John Moxley, I would say. Maybe Kenny Omega, I would say. I would hold to like people that have a broader idea of what do I want for all of professional wrestling rather than what do I want for me right now. And I think Takeshita is saying, look, if people want to be antagonistic towards me because I'm a quote outsider, even though I'm signed, I'm contracted, he doesn't see himself as DDT's Konosuke Takeshita, doesn't see himself as New Japan's, doesn't see himself as AEW. It's just Konosuke Takeshita. So it's the real sort of, maybe this is sharing a similar political mindset to Zack Sabre Jr., but, having the means of production and having and what do we produce? Well, we produce like emotion in people, and we produce a will for people to buy tickets and be a part of these settings. And I think Takeshita, on that basis, says I'm going to be true to myself and true to my vision of what that is. And if that antagonizes people, so much the better. I'm not going to kowtow to anybody. I think in a sense, Gabe Kidd is a very similar mindset as well. And I think like that is the key to this one. I'm very intrigued. I'm intrigued to, hopefully I'll get to sit down with Zach next week and intrigued to get his mindset, because I think they're very similar, but at the same time, you do, to your point, like Zach being, a double underlined and bold world heavyweight champion, the most traveled. We were talking about his singles schedule when we were on commentary this week, and how many 35 singles matches.
Yep, and in every corners of the country, you couldn't think of wrestling the Philippines and going to China now. And
right,
it was a
Chile and
big
stuff like that.
Big schedule for Sabre Jr.
Yeah. And having, but at the same time, being New Japan's Zack Sabre Jr. So that is where I think you have, in a very weird sense, somebody that wasn't created in the Noge Dojo, and even when he first came to Japan was with Pro Wrestling Noah. But he's he used to say it sort of faux mockingly that I'm the true successor of what Inokiism is, or what strong style is. But I think a lot of people genuinely do see him that way. And now you have full circle in the same venue pretty much 1 year to the day where he first won the World Heavyweight Championship. Then a lot of people are going to be behind Zach.
It's really interesting to see the way that different members of our roster that are on the upper echelon of cards, if you will, view the World Heavyweight Championship, because you have someone like Zach who I don't think he's going to go out of his way to say I am New Japan Pro Wrestling Zack Sabre Jr. for the sake of it being New Japan Pro Wrestling, but more because Zach just believes New Japan is where pro wrestling is at its best, right? And that's why the IWGP World Heavyweight title matters. But, then you have guys like Yota Tsuji who kind of almost talk like they want to take the world out of the World Heavyweight Championship, talk about bringing back the original IWGP Heavyweight Championship that a lot of modern day fans might, have a deeper attachment to. And certainly Tsuji has made clear in interviews that he does. And, Konosuke Takeshita now saying, I want to be IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, not just for New Japan Pro Wrestling, but for the world, where I think now more than ever, New Japan fans want New Japan in their New Japan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
With how much we've had such with all the forbidden doors and with all of everything else. Listen, it was fun. It was fun for a while, and it'll continue to be fun. I'm sure we're going to see them in the future. But getting to see talent from other organizations come in. You can even talk about Pro Wrestling Noah, or the times we get Dragon Gate stars, or whoever come ever. It's just a reminder of why New Japan pro wrestlers and those coming out of the Noge Dojo are as special as they are. And to have someone that is not of that volition, does not believe, hey, New Japan Pro Wrestling is truly the best, because I represent professional wrestling as a whole, holding the IWGP Gold if Takeshita wins it. I'm really intrigued by what the perception is going to be like that for our fans.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's one of those things. I think New Japan, when we're always at our best when we have that sense of this being a true melting pot. And I think where you have a lot of guys, everybody wants to come here, everybody wants to compete here. And then we see that underlined in who the champion is, who the best is. So I think there is this sense of, we want everybody to come in, but we want the top guy to be our guy, because I think there is that passion and that deep ingrained love of the sort of New Japan as the standard bearer for a certain pro wrestling culture. Ultimately at the end of the day, as Takeshita says, strength is strength, and that is his sort of quest is for true strength, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of sort of, I guess, within all sorts of fan bases, and you sort of look to the left and you look to the right. I think this probably applies to a broader society right now. Where the true conversation is not left or right, it's up and down, right? So I mean, who is at the top? And I think that is what drives Takeshita. Saying this G1 trophy is the pinnacle of strength, right? This is the pinnacle of what it is to be strong, and being the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, that is the standard in professional wrestling. That's what drives him. That is the true symbol of strength. I think that is something ultimately, of course, Takeshita respects New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think it's a very sort of nuanced conversation.
Yeah. Because then I know you've heard this, you've seen it a million times too. People will take what you're saying, the pinnacle of strength line. Someone will quote that somewhere and say, but if that was truly what he felt, why isn't he here? And why hasn't he been here for destruction? Why hasn't he been here for XYZ? And it's so many things, just like everything else in the world. It's not black or white.
I think you can just as easily say, yeah, well, I mean, somebody might not be here because he's there representing that pinnacle of strength elsewhere, right? I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for, say, if you were taking it out of the male wrestling quotient, then you look at, say, Mercedes Moné, what she's done over the last, year, going to all sorts of these different places that, Mercedes is very, very well paid.
Right.
So she doesn't have to go to any of these other where it seems like you never know where she might show up and win your title from. But the sort of the love of the game, but B, like the sort of that she has seized her own means of production. I think Takeshita sees that in that echelon. Maybe Saya Kamitani is gathering a lot of belts at the moment, so maybe she sees herself in that echelon as well.
Well, wrestling fans, that's going to be all for us here at the official NJPW English podcast. But before we get off the air here today, I want to talk a little bit about what's to come in the schedule, not just for October 6th in Korakuen Hall, but back-to-back nights in Korakuen Hall, albeit one of them available via NJPW World pay-per-view. Taiji Ishimori gets even more ridiculous, a 120-minute, that is 2 hours, if you count them in regular people time, 2 hours of a battle royal. I have no idea. None of us have any idea of what to expect coming up on the day other than Taiji Ishimori 120-minute matchup in Korakuen Hall, a special NJPW World pay-per-view production. So we want to give our special shouts out there. That will be live with English coverage. Myself, Walker Stewart, and Chris Charlton will be in the booth coming up on the night. So you can bet your bottom dollar. You're going to be getting your bottom dollar's worth and even your top dollar's worth as well. All the dollars in between, well, we're not too certain. But that is going to be it for the official NJPW English podcast. We hope to see you coming up live October 4th, October 6th, October 7th, October 11th, and of course, October 13th, 2025 for some great New Japan Pro Wrestling content. Up until then, I've been Walker Stewart for Chris Charlton. This has been New Japan Pro Wrestling's official English podcast. Kokugikan, y'all. Sayonara, and we'll see you next time.